What's going on, poker fam? We are back. We have a session that is 1-3 at MGM. I have been playing some 2-5, so don't worry. There will be a 2-5 video coming out at Maryland Live. At MGM. But just be patient. As far as the winner goes, in the next video will be the ones where I announce it. So the voting is done. You can no longer jump into the sweepstakes. So the next video, I will tell you the winners, and then I'll give you a way to contact me. But I want everyone to let me know. I did a little bit different on my editing. You'll see, obviously, when we get to the first hand, you let me know if you like this way better or if you like the other way better. But here we are. It's a little weird. We're starting off with $270. It was a weird situation, but it's how it happened. And we're going to try to run this thing up. Let's get right to it. All right, so in this first hand, we get dealt pocket aces. So when there's a raise to 15, there's one caller, but that caller looked very skeptical if he wanted to call it 15. So when it gets to me, even though I'm in a small blind, I normally would raise 4x plus a limp. So in this case, that would be like 75. But because I don't think that the second caller was very strong, I'm just going to ignore that. And I want to call, it's my first hand. So I just raised it up to 45. Definitely could be going a lot larger. But seeing as that I have aces and there's only two people that have money in the pot that might call, I think that this is a good price. But even with that great price, the original raiser folds and the person who flatted also folds as well. So anyways, it's a good job to get aces my first hand, and we got some momentum. We got about $30 in dead money. So now we're in the profit, and let's move on to the next hand. So in this hand, I do start off a little bit on the shorter stack. There was a couple hands after the aces where I raised. Didn't hit the flop well. Too many people in the hand to keep on trying to bluff. Lose about $67 like that. You know how it goes on poker. But in this hand, we have our chance for redemption. So we have King 10 of diamonds in the small blind. There's an under the gun limp and the button limps as well. So I decided to raise it up to 20 with a premium hand, in my opinion. So they both decided to call the 20, so we were off three ways to a flop, which comes 10, 5, 4, 2 spades and a club. So we do have top pair, second best kicker. So I'm just going to be putting money into this pot. So I decided to go for a 1/3 sizing of 20, and they both decide to call. So obviously I know one of them does have a flush draw, and I pretty much like it when the turn is a queen of clubs. Now, obviously it is an overcard to my pair, but what queens are they really going to have unless they specifically had a queen high flush draw? So I actually like this card a lot. It doesn't complete the front door flush. So I decide to bet out for 60. Now, that makes it pretty awkward because I only have about 60 left. So it is awkward, but nonetheless, I've already decided that I'm going to go all in with this hand, even if the front door flush comes in. So at this point, I don't mind if they both call or whatever happens. But the under the gun who limped decides to fold, and only the button decides to continue. So we are off to a river, which comes the deuce of clubs, bringing in the backdoor club draw. But however, like I said, I look down and I decide to go all in. When I get the final count, it's only 53. And this guy is hemming and hawing, thinking that I have nothing. Oh, you have nothing. So I'm guessing he's probably going to try to call me off very light. But I'm just going to play the table footage for you and let you hear what he was thinking.
I don't know. I really have nothing. But I have a feeling, so I'm going to call. I have nothing. I have an ace high. Call.
So obviously, when you have a pair, we love those ace high call downs. We love them every time. That just shows you that in 1-3, people just are clicking buttons all the time. So obviously, it's a good thing I wasn't bluffing, but he should know I'm not going to be bluffing two people for all three streets with little money on the table. So obviously, I'm going to have something. But nonetheless, I got more than a double up, and now we actually have a real legit stack to try to bully the table now, because we went from having a little bit under 200 to now having close to $500. Let's get it. So we have another interesting hand. There is a straddle, and I decided to raise it up to 20. Only the straddle decides to call, so we're off to a flop, which is queen 10-6. So obviously we have an overcard and a gut shot to the Broadway straight. So when he checks to me, I decide to bet out for 20 and he snap calls to 20. So don't know quite exactly what he has, but we're off to a turn, which comes another queen. So me not having a queen means he definitely could have just called with top pair. I definitely could be putting in a double barrel sometimes, but at the end of the day, I just wanted to see a river card. So when he checks, I decide to check, and the river is a king. So that now does upgrade us to Broadway, and now he decides to bet out for 40. Now, to my point, if he had a queen, there are a lot of combos that would give him a full house, queen 10, and king queen as well. So when he bets out for 40, I was actually thinking about just calling, but that's extremely nitty. So I'm looking at his stack. It's kind of awkward. He has about 160 or so left. So raising to 100 or 120 wouldn't really make sense to leave him with like 40 or $50 left. So after just hoping that I don't get snap called, I decide to raise it up to 175 or whatever it was that covered him. And he thinks just for a moment, and then he actually decides to fold. So he could have just been trying to steal it on the river because I checked through him a turn. But either way, do you think that that was a good jam, or do you think that in that situation I would only get called if he had a boat? Leave me an opinion in the comments and let's have a discussion about it. So in this next hand, we have King Queen offsuit. We are in middle position. There was a straddle, so I decided to raise it up to 25, and only the button decides to call. So when we go to a flop, it is 8-8 deuce with two spades. At the time, I didn't know exactly which card I had was a spade, but I did know one of them was a spade. Turns out it was the king, which is the better one, obviously. So on this board, I decided to bet out for 25. Same thing I made it pre-flop, and the button decides to stick in the call. So now the turn is a deuce to diamond. So now the board is 8-8 deuce deuce. So obviously any 8 or deuce makes a full house. And there's also two flush draws on the board. Now, a lot of people will just want to check here, being scared, but I just think that he had a flush draw or just had maybe some overcards he wanted to take a shot with. So now I decided to bet out for $70, and on this $70 bet, our opponent decides to fold. So obviously that was a great result. Got him to put in $25 pre, 25 on the flop. So that was a little bit more than $55 of profit we made on this hand after the rake. So we are doing good. We got some momentum. And now we're going to try to keep it rolling in this very next hand. So in this next hand, we are in middle position with Queen 9 of spades. There's an under the gun raise to 10. And seeing that it's such a cheap price with a suited connector, I decided to go ahead and stick in the call. So we're going heads up to a flop, which comes King Queen 4. The 4 being the spade and the two high cards being clubs. So I do have middle pair, backdoor flush, and straight draws. So when he checks, I just decided to go ahead and check it back. No need in betting here. And the turn comes the 5 of clubs. So now the flush draw does complete, but when he bets 11, I'm not buying that he has a flush because any flush or king would have bet. So I just decided to call. I could be raising maybe to charge his one club hands, but as played, I just call, and the river is a queen of hearts, so we do upgrade to trips. So now when he checks to me, I want to put a small bet that he could call. So I just throw out $20, and he doesn't take long at all and then decides to fold. So we end up winning this hand, and we're off to the next one. Okay, so in this next hand, you can let me know if I am suicidal or if I'm a genius. So we raise it up to 15 under the gun with Queen 10 of spades. About as light as I would want to raise under the gun, but as play is what I do. One person calls in between and middle position decides to bump it up to 45. So obviously we all know in low stakes, 3 bets are not very light, but making it 45 gives me a great price with a suited connector. So of course I decide to call, and the player in between decides to put in the fold. So now we're going heads up to a flop, which comes 10-6-4 with 2 hearts. So when I check, he decides to bet out for 30. That's a pretty good price, seeing as that there's roughly $105 in the pot. So of course, I'm going to call, trying to hit 2 pair or trips, and he could just have ace king possibly. So on the turn, it is a 9 of clubs. And so on this card, when I check, he decides to check it through. Now, I think he could do that with definitely with aces, ace king, or anything of the sort. So I'm not ruling out that he could still have me beat, but he could just be wanting to take some pot control. So now on the river, it comes a three. And when I check, he puts out a bet of 30. Now that bet is just so small at this point, so it seems like he's either trying to bluff me off with ace king or he's just going for thin value possibly. So seeing is that I just see that as weakness and I just don't want to get beat by a hand like let's say he did raise with like ace 10 or king 10 suited or something like that. I would just hate to go to showdown and lose like that. So I decide to raise it up pretty big. I bump it up to 120 and he's looking at it and he said, "Oh man, did you make a straight? Did you make a straight?" I'm just like, "No, that's not good." When somebody's saying that, that means they got a pretty strong hand. So he doesn't have ace king, I know that. So now I kind of actually want to fold because I know I'm behind. And he actually does fold pocket queens. It was incredible, but I thought he might have had a hand like that. But just seeing that weak bet on the river, I just had to attack it because it just lets me know that he's not that confident in his hand. So you let me know if that was suicidal bluff or was that a great bluff to get somebody off of an overpair. Because obviously in poker, if you want to be a good poker player, you do have to get players to fold hands better than yours. But you let me know what you think, and we're off to the next hand. Okay, so in this hand, it is crazy action, but I do not have the footage. But I do remember it very vividly, and this is a hand that we could all talk about. So I am in the big blind with King 5 of diamonds. There's an under the gun limp, and then there's a +1 who decides to raise it up to 17. It folds around to me. Normally, I don't really like calling with these type of hands, but if you hit your flush, you're going to be good more times than not. But if you hit top pair, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. But anyways, being said, I decided to go ahead and call, and that brings in the under the gun limper. So now we are off to a flop, which comes 6-4 deuce, all spades. So not really loving this spot. Definitely thinking about folding here. If there's a bet, I do have a gut shot, but I could already be beat. But once again, I check. It checks to the razor, and he actually checks back. So now I'm thinking he probably doesn't have a high spade, or maybe he just wants to pot control and get there. So now the turn is a 3, giving us the straight. So now with that being said, I decide to bet out for $20. And when I bet out for 20, the +1 decides to call, and then weirdly enough, the razor decides to call as well. So that actually did trouble me a little bit, but not that much. The river was a 9 of heart, so obviously we do have the straight, and there's not 4 spades on the board. So now I decide to bet out for 40. And when I bet out for 40, the limper decides to stick in the call. So I'm actually really liking that spot because I know that I have him beat. He would raise if he had a flush. And then so the pre-flop raiser now decides to make a raise, and a monster raise at that. He makes it $250. So now, obviously, I'm just thinking like, yo, what is going on? Like, he didn't bet the flush on the flop. He didn't raise on the turn, and now he just wakes up with it on the river. So I'm really thinking that I should just put in this call because why would he just wake up with a flush at this moment? But then my initial thing was to fold, and I'm just still like, I'm still going back and forth about if I did the right thing in real time. So I'm just trying to think like, okay, in 1-3, they just always have it when they river raise, especially when they river raise huge. So I'm just thinking I should fold, right? But then the theory side of me starts to come up with a lot of hands that he could have. He could have um, ace 9, so top pair with the ace of spade, turn his ace of spade into a bluff. He could have pocket aces possibly with the ace of spade, and seeing that it was a low connected flush board, maybe he didn't want to bet into it. I'm not sure, but the theory side was just thinking about all the bluffs combinations just start popping up in my head, popping up in my head. I'm like, you know what? No, that is not where we want to be at. Let's go with what we know. So After about tanking, probably was about 2 or 3 minutes, because I do have a straight and I know I got the other person beat. I actually reluctantly decide to fold. And when I fold, the undergun limper folds and he shows that he had a set of threes, and the original razor, and mind you, because people say that I shouldn't show my hands, but I showed him a hand one time. So when I folded, he wasn't going to show. I said, bro, can I get a show, please? And he said, all right, just because you showed me earlier. And he actually had ace nine of spades. So he did flop the flush and was just slow playing it all the way through. And he said he was happy when he seen that turn card, because he knew that was going to give somebody a straight. And what do you think about that fold? Obviously, now that you know the results, you know what I should have did. But what do you think in real time overall? Should I fold it there, or do you think that it's okay to put in a call in that situation? You let me know. But definitely was a little bit of money that we lost, and that's why I don't like playing hands like King 5 suited. But anyways, let's get on to the next hand. So we are sitting in the button this hand with Ace Jack offsuit, and there's a tight raise from under the gun to 15. So normally the certain player I would be 3-betting this hand in position, but seeing as this guy's been pretty tight, I'm just going to try to realize my equity. So we are off to a flop, which comes Queen Jack 6, all diamonds. I do have the ace of diamonds, so I have technically a backdoor royal flush draw. So anyways, he decides to bet out for 15, and I call. And when I call, a offsuit king rolls off. So now he checks, and I don't think that there's no really point in betting, because I told you he's pretty tight. So I check back, and then on the river, we go to another king. And when he checks, I could be going for a thin value, but I don't really know where you could have that I could get value from. So I checked back as well, and he shows that he had pocket tens. So, maybe I could have squeaked out a little bit of value from him, but I'm not sure. But you let me know if you think I should have put out a little bet on the river, or if you think the check was about standard. So, but anyways, we win the pot and we're off to the next hand. So in this next hand, trying to rebound from that, we have King Queen and the hijack. We raised it up to 15 and only the button calls. So we were off to a flop, which comes 7-6-3 with two hearts. So not the best board in the world for me, but at the same time, I do have a heart in my hand, so I could go runner runner. So I decided to put a little bit of pressure on him. So I just decided to bet out for $15. And he decides to quickly put in the call. So the turn is another 6. So I figured now if I had like pocket kings or pocket aces, I would be feeling a lot better about my situation. So now I decided to stick in a bet of 45, and he decides to put in the fold. So that's another hand that we win. Getting that double barrel is always important, and I think in poker sometimes you can't just bet one time on the flop and then give up on the turn just because they call. So anyways, we win this hand and we are off to the next one. Okay, so at this point, we're getting close to the time that is for us to leave. So this hand's not that interesting, but decently enough. So there was this kid who has been doing a lot of 3-betting on my raises, and I have been folding to him just because I don't think that they're light. But now I'm starting to get suspicious, and actually, we get lucky, and we are having ace king. So there was about 2 limps, and then when it gets to him on the button, he decides to raise it up for $30. Now, obviously, in a 1-3 game, even with 2 limps, that's an incredibly large raise. So, a lot of times with a hand like Ace King, some people will get a little shook thinking that, oh man, they must have a big hand because they're raising like that. But nonetheless, I'm going to put pressure on that raise and see how much he likes to raise for 30. When I decide to bump it up all the way up to $100 is the new price of poker. And he does this little tanking thing, but I know he doesn't have anything, so he thinks about it, counts out some chips. If he decides to go all in, then so be it. Let's just get it all in. If you got aces, congratulations. If you got kings, congratulations. Anything else, we're going to have a good old flip, and I don't mind flipping. But after all of the Hollywood, and he decides to fold. So after that, I decide to rack it up, get out of here. So now let's discuss our results. So we were into the game for, I know this is a very weird number, but we were into the game for $270, and we were out for $550. $180. So that is a profit of $310. Pretty good day at the office. Not going to be mad. Like I said, there are so many hands that I played that just aren't interesting. But I tried to accomplish the goal of showing you the biggest points of the session. So obviously, I want y'all to leave comments. Let me know what you think about the hands. I appreciate y'all for subscribing, for watching my videos. Let me know, do you like this new style of having my face talking in the corner? Or do y'all want me to go back into the booth and just do a normal voice recording? But either way, I appreciate it. So if you're here new, like, comment, and subscribe. And until the next video, holla.